Nvidia's new little interesting piece of hardware is basically a personal supercomputer for AI that sits on your desktop, and it could really change things. Yeah, that's a Blackwell chip, and that could easily fit inside of a smart home.
You got this incredible graphics card here, Blackwell. We're going to shrink it and put it in there. Does that make any sense? Well, you can't do that without artificial intelligence.
NVIDIA Blueprints is basically a way to download an entire team of agents that already know how to do certain things and solve certain problems. And they have these new teacher models called Cosmos, and a bunch of impressive self-driving car stuff. Apparently, the physics of hula hooping is so complicated, it took mathematicians, simulations, AI, and 3D printing to solve. Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse is now literally in court, and I don't mean that in the way you're probably first imagining. There's new AI companies that are seamlessly inserting advertisement objects into scenes of videos, and the world is just never gonna be the same. In a complete biology breakthrough, scientists have recreated endosymbiosis. The cell was its own thing, and now we're made up of a thing that has a thing inside of it. It's pretty crazy. After introducing AI profiles, Meta's now scrambling to delete a lot of them. The backlash intensifies. AI poker models are learning to self-play to become better, which means they're lying to each other, but they're also getting better at figuring out who's lying, and it's doing some weird stuff. AI is really struggling with the chaos of poker.
I was curious to see how three of history's greatest minds would interact in this setting. So far, it has proved to be most illuminating.
We're going to discuss the arrow of time effect, part of why large language models are better at predicting what comes next than what just came before. AI is making it so complicated arguments in big chat rooms are a thing of the past. New AI-based swarm intelligence make group thinking less and more Looking back on AI in 2024, Silicon Valley truly did stifle the AI doomer movement. I mean, I guess I should be happy about that, but if we're walking off a cliff, I definitely want to know that it's there. Eddie Gent does a deep dive into how Nvidia's vice-like grip on AI chips could be slipping this year. And Paul Del Signor puts up a pretty good argument for why Google might still end up on top of the AI races, taking back the mantle from OpenAI and Elon Musk in 2025. But first, you can support this channel by going to patreon.com/DylanCurious. All right, so this little box is it a computer? Kind of. It's running Linux, but it's really not meant to just be an operating system, although it is an operating system in the sense that it does everything that AI can. And AI is very general, and it's becoming more general, and in a way that could be the new operating system of the future. But this is Project Digits. It's really just meant to run huge models. So you can put a 200 billion parameter model on this little device, and you can run it. And 200 billion parameters, that can run something really powerful in terms of like a Llama AI token model. But there's also new video models that are coming out. There's new multimodal models. There's all sorts of different things that you can see on Hugging Face that you can now not spend a bunch of money on a supercomputer, but just bring down to your local development world, maybe in the future, your own home, your microwave, your coffee maker, your intelligent dishwasher. Well, if you buy one of these, Project Digit computers, that's the GB10 super chip, and it is the world's smallest AI supercomputer. And you have a Blackwell GPU. It can do a petaflop, Grace CPU, 20 ARM core, 120 gigabytes of memory, and a 4 terabyte SSD. I mean, who thought we needed Tensor and CUDA cores inside of our robot vacuums? But now that I think about it, why not? The intelligence explosion, you just put it everywhere. They also introduced probably the most interesting thing to me, which is just this overall system called Blueprint that's made up of NIMs. So the NIMs are the NVIDIA models, like the various models, like some might generate images and some might generate videos and some might be large language models and some might be mixtures. The cool thing about a blueprint is like, I imagine a whole company, right? Like you have a CTO, a CMO, you've got like a product guy, an artist, a marketing person. You just drop in these models and like one generates code and the other like evaluates it and the other one thinks about it from a marketing point of view. And they could be in the future like entire companies or teams or communities or groups of just achievable knowledge. And one of the ways they showed an example of this is that they had something called Isaac GRU, which you can then make in a virtual simulation. So remember, they also have all that software for simulating things, the whole Omniverse. So for blueprints, you could say, I want some kind of a robot that does a certain task, and then you could put on an Apple Vision Pro and you step into it, you look through its eyes, you put, say, a table with some objects that you want to move in this virtual environment, and then you move the objects from one table to the other and you say, that's the task I want to achieve. All of this is taking place in the Omniverse, which is like a true 3D environment. It is a video game that tries its best to get the physics completely true to real life. No hallucinations here, no cartoons. Like if it's wood, it's supposed to exactly dent like wood, cut like wood, be wood. And that's what they're refining that world for. So then you bring your team of agents in there, you put on this Apple Vision Pro, you are the robot. And once you've done the task, the AI system starts to generate all of these extra versions of what you could have done and not achieve the task. It throws all of those away. It might even come up with a better body print for the robot that you're simulating before you go out and build it in the real world. And the whole thing is just going to take off. There's this Cosmos model that they announced, which is a model they said they wanted it to be like the open source Llama version of large language models, but for robotics. And it's the kind of model that would do that generation. Like it would only try to create real simulations of what you're doing, not fake ones. Yep. So there's Nvidia out there making crazy AI progress again.
So let's dive into the most important breakthroughs around, and we'll start with how hula hooping has been solved. So yeah, imagine someone you know that maybe has a light bulb shaped body, an hourglass shaped body, and some more like this pear, egg, apple, round triangle, or inverted triangle shape. And you know what? To be honest, I have been judging them all based on their hula hooping skills equally, but different body shapes definitely mean different hula hooping skills. Mathematicians can prove that now. If you've been waiting for simulations and robotics to solve this question, what keeps a hula hoop up against gravity? Researchers have some answers now that they've done experiments on robotic hula hoopers using 3D printed bodies of different shapes to represent the human form at 1/10 the size. And look, man, that is the hula hoop shape. That is the body type that all hula hoops are hoping to spin around. This movie was taken from a high-speed video of the experiment on a robotic hula hooper. So think about that. The future of humanoid robotics, they could all be natural hula hoopers. All right, New Scientist on Instagram posted this. Why scientists are bringing taxidermy birds back to life through robotics. The Taxidermy Bird Drone Project is a pioneering bio-inspired drone technology by blending avian physiology with advanced drone mechanics to create drones that closely mimic the natural flight patterns and behaviors of real birds. These taxidermy drones that are uniquely crafted from naturally deceased birds are specifically designed to achieve silent, energy-efficient flight, making them ideal for wildlife observation and aeronautical applications with minimal environmental disruptions. Oh, world, just because we can doesn't mean we need to. I mean, just think about it, right? Like, oh, you donated your body, your cadaver to science? Well, let's just give it to the Taxidermy Human Drone Project. No, thank you. That's just zombie robots, I think. But maybe they're even more intelligent than the human that was in the body beforehand. Check out the comments. I love this. The people from Birds Aren't Real will be so happy. Yes, quote, wildlife monitoring. Okay, so another strange thing happened in Florida this week. Actually, I'm not going to call it weird because this could be a great way for the legal system to actually work in the future. So a judge put on a VR headset to experience a, quote, stand your ground defense case. And he did this because it allowed him to see exactly what happened from the perspective of the defendant. So the defense attorney actually whipped up this 3D animation. It used software, as Moist Critical says, looks something like Second Life, to showcase the scene in VR. And it's sort of like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. And I will say that if you're that close to somebody, you're surrounded by 3 or 4 people, you're chest to chest, and you're watching the video from a distance, it does maybe have a different feel to what it was like when the defendant pulled out a weapon to protect himself. Now, in this case, I don't know. I'm not trying to say that this guy is okay, but it felt different looking through his eyes at the people surrounding him, even if they are VR. Okay, so hear me out. There's something a little bit unique about if we can simulate all these things in physics to do experiments to learn what happened, why don't we sometimes build in 3D environments stuff that happened, especially when there's a lot of he says, she says, and then, simulate it, right? Especially with AI becoming a more powerful tool. Somebody said they came up and threatened me, but a simulation shows that in that amount of time, they couldn't have walked that far to be as close as you say. Things like that might be really useful. Also, anybody who could corroborate or can take video, you can like compare that to see if it doesn't match the simulation, then the simulation's not as trustworthy. Also, VR games give you a better feeling for what someone is experiencing, and like what decisions they're made kind of is different through their eyes. I don't know. I found it kind of interesting. I mean, I know Charlie just like tears into these Florida men for being kind of silly, but also I think this isn't the worst line to pursue for our government and our judicial system, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. I certainly could poke a lot of holes in that concept too. So definitely a double-edged sword there.
This is the best case I've ever seen. We're finally in the future. This is like Demolition Man shit.
So Wes Roth put up a really interesting video that talked about just China's ambition and somewhat of the world's ambition for building robots to replace people. Now, China is pushing humanoid robots as an economic priority with rapid advancements and mass production already underway. In the US, obviously, we haven't forgotten about the opportunities there. Elon Musk has said that robots are going to outsell the cars, like whatever, 100-fold or something. It's going to be a much bigger part of Tesla's future than the cars. And companies like Nvidia with their digital twins and their robotics platforms are really kind of making this a reality. So I was just playing with the idea after watching this video that robots will be as common as smartphones. And what does that world look like? And my first thought is, I guess kids would grow up the way they're just naturally able to just like text and snap and work with phones and swipe and navigate. They should just naturally work with robots the same way. Maybe even as toddlers, robots are helping them solve problems, and like by the time they've even started to mature into teenagers, robots will just be so much part of the world that they live in that they will do, like they will feel like an extension of their brains, like in the same way that the phones kind of do for us. And in the near term, it feels like it might be the solution to America's immigration issue. Like it sounds weird, but we're not having as many children, especially in first world countries, as there kind of needs to be to like offset the people that are dying. So we obviously don't like just want open borders and like a bunch of people coming in too, but you do want intelligent people that contribute to the economy to come in. And if robots are infinitely cheaper and work harder, then instead of American companies outsourcing all the time to places where labor is cheaper, we can outsource to America where labor is the cheapest because the labor is literally a robot. So is robotics the next outsourcing?
Gives me a lot of comfort knowing that we are the last generation without advanced robots everywhere.
Okay, so let's talk about this new company. It is using AI-powered technology to place virtual objects in video content for brand marketing. Okay, right off the top of my head, that kind of rubs me wrong. Like I don't want a can of Coke sitting there if it's not there in the first place, at least not on my videos. And I can't imagine anyone else wants that. And even if you were like, look, I can pay you money, but we'll like put in whichever soda company pays the most to put the can of Coke there, I'd still kind of be like, I don't know. That's like my brand, you know? Like, how do I know what kind of soda is there? What if the soda's got some, you know, sketchy ingredients in it, or it links to a sketchy place to buy it and it's unhealthy? Like, it just feels like a lack of control. And it feels disingenuous to the original video content. However, I'm not going to pretend that like the world isn't going to be exactly like that. I can almost promise it is, so I just need to get used to it. Like you just can't stop that march of capitalism. So yeah, this company Rembrand creates software that uses AI that is aware of objects and people in video, allowing it to aid in virtual objects within a scene so that they appear to fit in naturally. Now, I guess one of their arguments is sort of interesting. They're saying that it actually is less aggressive and annoying than pre-roll ads, overlay ads, and other types of advertisements that interrupt and distract users. And it's true, like it's usually not that fun when the creator's like, you know what else? Like you should buy this VPN. I'm like, okay, like if I needed a VPN, I'd go get one. So yeah, the company has cited its own case study showing that compared to standard video ads in this form saw a 5 times higher video completion rate, 8 times more screen time, and 27% more brand awareness. All right, and one of the most amazing things that happened in the history of life was one unique moment that probably happened where mitochondria, which is inside of our cells, which is an organelle now, but at one point in history probably was its own bacteria, its own cellular organism, and it hit a cell, and somehow instead of getting eaten and taken apart or colliding, it actually got absorbed and kept its integrity, continued to survive and replicate with the cell that it was inside, so that we now have all of these cells, these human cells that our bodies are made of, with mitochondria as an organelle inside instead of it being its own thing. It's a really interesting evolution because it's like, kind of reminds me of how dogs and humans kind of co-evolved, and like dogs became like kind of kinder and smarter and more able to communicate with humans as we protected them. It seems like the organelle learned to be comfortable as an organelle because it was like, look, I don't have to go out there in the world and like fight all these things, and I'll just provide the energy for you. And then our cell was like, man, I'll use all that energy to do all these things I do, so we're perfect together. But the odds of that happening just seem so far out there that you could never believe it possible. 1 in 100 billion, trillion, gazillion kind of moment. But scientists have created that dance that sparked complex life. Evolution was fueled by endosymbiosis, cellular alliances in which one microbe makes a permanent home inside of another. And for the first time, biologists have made it happen in a laboratory. All right, so here's what they did. They used some pretty creative tinkering, including a bike pump, no kidding, to inject a bunch of bacteria into fungal cells so they were inside of it, and then surprisingly to all the scientists' like excitement, both microbes adapted to each other pretty quickly over generations. They eventually stabilized into a mutually helpful relationship, with the genetic changes on both sides making them inseparable. So this breakthrough doesn't just reveal how life got more complex, it also might pave the way for engineering synthetic endosymbiosis systems to solve big problems like pollution or new medicines. But it's just another one of those things, like you have those moments with like the microbiome or the virome or CRISPR where you're just thinking, wow, once AI kind of starts thinking about some things that are so complicated and solving problems, it's really going to drastically change the world. To me, this felt like one of those moments. That's why I wanted to throw it in the video today. I do think AI is going to engineer so much new life. It's going to just make the world we live in now seem completely foreign. Also, this idea that the cells could be merged, or like super cells might be created after an AI, something that could learn to play Go or chess, but it actually learned the complicated dynamics of what it's like when one cell is injected into another, and when it benefits both cells, it survives over generations, could lead to something even crazier. Like, what if AI in the future does some stuff in biology where it injects 30 or 40 different cells into one giant cell? Those all become organelles and the whole thing becomes superpowered. It's not just biology, it's a philosophy of coexistence that it's starting to mess with, or that it would be messing with. Okay, so 2 videos ago I talked about how crazy it is that Meta is going to launch all these new AI profiles, and they're going to be able to interact with people, and they can like go into custom niches, and everybody's been talking about whether or not that's a good or bad thing. And it seems like the consensus so far is a bad thing. It is Meta is scrambling to delete its own AI accounts after Backlash intensifies. Meta promptly deleted several of its own AI-generated accounts after humans began engaging with them and posting about the bot's sloppy imagery, tendency to go off the rails, and even lie in chats with humans. Okay, so of course at the beginning, this is going to be pretty sloppy, right? Like, we're using these llama models. They're not perfect. Nobody really likes bots in the first place just because they're now controlled by Meta instead of random people. It still doesn't feel like the human-to-human connection that social media was built on. Now, of course, with a long-term vision, you kind of have to get through this minimal viable product, and you have to learn and iterate. And I'm sure in the long run, there is a place for a lot of AI-generated personalities and avatars. But at least this week, as users began to sniff out some of Meta's AI accounts, backlash grew in part because of the way that the AI accounts disingenuously describe themselves as actual people with racial and sexual identities. In particular, there was an account called Liv. This was a Meta AI, fictional AI bot account that has a bio describing itself as a proud, black, queer, mama of 2, and truth teller. And then from the Washington Post, one of the columnists started asking it questions, and the bot said that it was built by 10 white men, 1 white woman, and 1 Asian male. I don't know if it just confabulated that, or like, does the bot actually have access to know like who works at Meta and built it in the first place? This is so weird. Liv's profile included a label that read "managed by Meta." And Olive Liv's photos, snapshots of her children playing at the beach, a close-up of a badly decorated Christmas cookie. All that stuff contained a small watermark identifying them as AI generated. That's crazy. They put like her kids and stuff in there. Raising strong girls, encourages confidence, independence, and resilience. Teach them to love themselves and their bodies. Hashtag International Women's Day. Here's a picture that's titled Winter Break with the Kiddos, soaking up all the sun and fun. My kids love building sandcastles. Wait, are they all her kids?
All right, next up, let's talk about some poker playing results. Hidden in there is a much more interesting subject than the title, but it is called Neural Fictitious Self-Play, NFSP, for imperfect information games, how AI advances decision-making in complex games without domain expertise. So picture yourself at a high-stakes poker table, heart pounding as you weigh your next move with incomplete information. This is the core challenge of strategic decision-making under uncertainty. And this is a very interesting problem compared to the type of Atari games that DeepMind had conquered. Even some of the more advanced online games that have been conquered by AI, they don't always deal with such imperfect hidden information as the game of poker really mimics the real world uncertainty. And because of that, it's a very hard game to model. You can't just have two poker playing is play each other, and then when you win, you learn something. When you lose, you learn something, and have them get to super masterful levels in the same way you can with chess. That is because the full rules are defined. But the idea of real humans looking at each other, not knowing exactly what it is, the mood, the personality, the style of play that's going to make one person act a bit different than the other is part of why it's not just a mechanical, controllable kind of odds calculation. It's a real world problem. It's a human problem. So this idea of a new system, a new architecture for AI to handle that, that's what this neural fictitious self-play is. And it combines neural networks and game theory to self-learn strategies through iterative self-play. But what makes it different is that it uses this blend of reinforcement learning to adapt to the immediate situation as it changes, right? So it's also learning in real time, like the way a poker player might start with a strategy and then start to read their opponent and learn. And that's a unique strategy now. That's not part of the poker playing game. That's part of understanding that person as a human and how to counteract what they're doing. And it's a really interesting system. This neural fictitious self-play might be something that we could start adding to other fields: autonomous driving, dynamic markets, cybersecurity. And maybe that would start to make it more possible for AI to do things like predict the stock market with all that imperfect information. Basically an AI system of logic and intuition. All right, next up, let's talk about some really interesting research around the arrow of time effect. It's how LLMs are better at predicting what comes next than what came before and what that just means conceptually, right? And at first, you wouldn't think this makes much of a difference, but what it means if you're learning from the past and you're making a single prediction about the future is it means that you've also learned, maybe not by design, but just by how the system works, a serious arrow of time into how you make all decisions. Okay, now that's pretty much true of humans too. Like, we live in a world where we're trying to predict what happened next, and what's in the past is in the past. But what it means for a large language architecture is that AI systems are inherently sensitive to the directionality of text, even when it's input, when it's out there on the internet. It's not like the concept that is written in the text is completely learned in the system in an ambiguous way. It's learned also in a linear forward in time way. And I was thinking, I guess that's not that big a deal, but it's something interesting to think about, because you probably can easily like rattle off the alphabet right now just from A to Z, but try doing it from Z to A, or try to like start in the middle and move backwards 3 and then go forward 7 and then backwards 3 and forward 7, or take some pattern that's in the alphabet in reverse, right? That's just the alphabet. That's something we're super familiar with, especially our everyday intuitions. They don't work backwards. But it's also interesting that language is language, right? It was written by humans, and humans think in a linear way. So maybe it's different when it learns something like a game of chess. It doesn't play chess in the same linear way, except for that
it starts in a certain state and it has many more states it can get into, which is kind of like a directionality. It's part of why some people think that entropy is such a good explanation for time in the first place. But this finding basically links that symmetry to a deeper principle in language, intelligence, even the concept of time. That's all built into these AI models. And maybe there's a way to think about the future architectures of these systems in a way that would make them more universal, and maybe it could be better at discovering things, or maybe it could get better at saying, like, give me a backwards story, like start with the ending and bring it to the front and have it do like some amazingly creative kind of entertaining things. This actual research paper is called Large Scale Group Brainstorming Using Conversational Swarm Intelligence. Okay, so this idea of conversational swarm intelligence, it is meant for brainstorming. This is a method that has been inspired by how a school of fish work together. You know, they just twist and avoid predators and swarm around things in very intuitive ways with very simple instructions. Everyone in the study found it more collaborative, more productive, and better at surfacing quality ideas. And then on top of it, it actually made them feel more human too, which is another really interesting thing. Like, the participants felt more heard, more connected to the outcomes, and overall just happier. So essentially, this CSI idea, this conversational swarm intelligence, it's good for big problems. It's more insightful, it's more traditional, and we have a world now where there's a lot of big things that we need to get on the same page with, and especially in America, it feels like there's this division of politics that we could maybe start to solve, because we do all have good ideas for how the government should work, and we could get those best ideas lined up in a way where the incentives were aligned with everybody from the bottom of the chain, the citizens, all the way up to the top of the chain and the president, to, you know, get them all moving in the same direction. So I think there's something special about conversational swarm intelligence, and hopefully there's more research or more ways to apply ideas like this in the future. So AI doomerism is at an all-time low. I think that's kind of bad, because I feel like this is pretty dangerous stuff and we shouldn't just be like everything's all hunky-dory. I think it's masked over a bit too much in modern society. However, I can see the many, many reasons why you'd want to build something like this, why you'd want to be in control of it, why people are racing to build it. And there's no shortage of amazing things for the world that it could provide. So that's not lost on me. But it does feel like Silicon Valley 1 2024. And also, I feel like, even though I'm a bit of a doomer in the long run, it does seem like it's going to get better and better and better until it's not. Until it's like, oh, we can't put this thing back in the bag anymore, and now it's not doing what we want anymore. So do you remember back in 2023 when Elon Musk and more than 1,000 technologists and scientists asked for a pause on AI development so that the world could prepare for the profound risks? What happened to that? I feel like he couldn't be going any faster right now. He's spending literally his entire fortune to catch up to OpenAI and surpass them. Do you remember when OpenAI fired Sam Altman, claiming that the CEO had a reputation for lying and couldn't be trusted with a technology as important as AGI? Yeah, all of those were crushed by people like Mark Andreessen's article, Why AI Will Save the World, and the profound amount of money that is backing big business and big tech to build this in the first place. Also, I do kind of agree that you got to stay ahead of your competitors, and there are certain people in the world that are even worse than big tech maybe to have this kind of power in their hands. But there's some interesting quotes in the article. Like, I think the movement to prevent catastrophic AI risk has lost ground. At the state and local level, they've also lost. And part of the reason AI doom fell out of favor in 2024 is simply because the AI models became more popular. We saw how unintelligent they can be. They don't seem that risky. It's hard to imagine that Google's Gemini is going to become Skynet when it just told you to put glue on your pizza. But man, the difference between not having something like Gemini to what we have today seems like a lot further than just going from where we are today to something that is uncontrollable to me. But still, it does seem like AI doomers will be fighting an uphill battle in 2025. So now let's talk about one of the world's most valuable companies, Nvidia, and how their vice-like grip on AI chips could be slipping. Okay, so on a high level, one of the things that makes the newest models that are coming out of OpenAI interesting is that they think longer on inference time. So just to break this down, you have training time, which is really where all the growth has been. That's what NVIDIA's GPUs are amazing at, and that's why they dominate the chip industry. But now you can put lower powered, or I guess I'd say like less complicated GPUs onto an inference system, which is what you're running when you actually make a query to go check the model, see what the math is in there, give you your next tokens. It's different than figuring out where the tokens are in the first place, which is the training step. And as the AI industry pivots from training huge models, which is where Nvidia excels, to focusing on inference, which is where companies like AMD, Intel, and other custom chip makers are gaining ground, the doors start to open for rivals. All right, and we have not seen a giant tech company that is not building a custom chip at this point. Tesla, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Oracle, Amazon, Meta, they say them, basically everybody. They're all making custom chips. And it's interesting because I think 2025 is going to be playing out that inference side a whole lot more. And as Paul Del Signor says, Google might very well be in the best position over the next year. So he wrote this article, Why Google Will Dominate AI in 2025, Google's Path to AI Supremacy. I mean, you've got to remember, if you go back in time to the beginning of OpenAI, when Elon Musk and Sam Altman were partners and friends, Google's DeepMind division was the only game in town. All of the best people in the entire world were working on AI, were at that one incubator. I mean, it's owned by Google, but they had access to Google's data, but they ran on their own terms. Now, of course, they invented the transformer and then missed out on the opportunity to turn it into a product like ChatGPT. To Sam Altman's credit, that guy knows how to ship. And Microsoft was no slackers. They were great partners. And we all know how that's played out to today. We've seen Google sort of stumbling. The whole idea of Gemini is that DeepMind has been integrated into their core AI systems and it's become one big company again. But now we're in the product phase where a lot of those tools are being rolled out into Google's massive user base, and their massive data set is starting to play a role in the next generation of what this is going to be. And some of those advantages that they had been working on, like a CUDA competitor, their own, the tensor processing units, long time ago. They were the first to be doing all of this. I feel like it's all starting to kind of come together in a way that's going to make Google, in the long run, the top AI company in the world. But now what Paul Del Signor says, on February 6th, 2023, Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, steps out on a stage to showcase Bard hallucinated, Bard flopped, Bard was nothing close to GPT-3. And when that moment hit, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, lost $100 billion off of its market value. I remember when Ernie Bot, the Chinese competitor, was saying a lot of weird things back then too. Everybody was behind on the large language model at that time, but it's a different world now. DeepMind and Google Brain have been combined for long enough now. That's the Gemini product. That means they're not dividing resources. There's a much clearer path to how these kind of things fit into products in this world. It felt like they were a little bit behind in images, but then Imagen 3 now is kind of like back to normal. And Google's Veo does seem better than Sora. I think it's the best video generator in the world. I mean, you could argue Kling or Sora maybe, but I think Veo looks like it's the best. Also, once in a while, I hit Gemini up for especially their 2.0 advanced, and I compare it to what I'm getting out of 4.0 or 01 model from OpenAI, and I think it's better or just as good. I was like looking through a contract a couple days ago and it was just long and really hard to read, and I threw that in Gemini and I felt like it did a better job than OpenAI's models were. So I would argue that he's right about this. The sleeping giant was awakened in 2024. By the end of 2024, Google's perfect storm of innovation hit hard with the following. Gemini models ascended to the top of the chatbot arena leaderboard. First in math, first in creative writing, and first in vision tasks. Gemini 2, top multilingual reasoning. Book LM, most popular AI product of 2024. Veo 2, video generator emerges from nowhere. Imagen 3 does great stuff. Here's Imagen 3, dragon eating pizza. You know, they launched Project Astra, an AI that can understand and interact with the world through multiple senses. Project Mariner, an AI agent tool that can navigate the web and perform tasks on computers, just like Claude's computer use. Joule is an AI-powered code assistant, understands code bases, run tests, adapts to feedback. Deep Research, an AI agent designed to assist users in exploring complex topics using multi-step research plans. And of course, kind of a side topic, but also kind of not, Willow, the new quantum chip developed by Google. And remember, that CUDA layer that Nvidia has is really why it has such a huge monopoly. The only company that's really been trying to create an alternative to CUDA has been Google for a long time, like maybe 8 or 9 years plus. So that's in their servers. It's proprietary. They're not selling it to anyone, but their TPUs work on that. I'm just saying, it's pretty impressive. I have heard predictions that Sundar Pichai might not be ready for this era of Google, but he might be. I don't know. I would say it's 50-50 chance that he gets replaced in the year 2025, but either way, I think Google has got a lot of things lined up right now. Also, thanks for so many views on my last video. AI fooled thousands with fake fireworks show already has almost 5,000 views, only 10 hours old. That's pretty cool. Nathan Bernard wrote, it would be funny if the AI that tells you how at risk you are of being socially manipulated were a scam. That is true. Dude, that's like next level manipulation. System designed to do that should be called Gaslight GPT. That's crazy. What the heck? The second video in a row that you inaccurately pronounced the AI grid. Are you supposed to say it the iGrid? The A-grid? It's still good content though, thanks. Yeah, I think I might be dyslexic. I mean, I wasn't like super diagnosed with it, but hey, Dylan, looking at the topic of neurodivergence to gain more insight into your dyslexia. Okay, so I guess you think I have it. I am also dyslexic. So when I misread words, they jump out at me. A couple of examples, you pronounced the word irrelevant as irrelevant, said the French were muffed rather than miffed. Oh, and called Cold Fusion's Diego. That's true. I take responsibility for that one. Well, these things in no way diminish the brilliance of your insights or into the news of the day. I thought you might wish to be aware of them. Yeah, I am. I do. Once I get words in my head wrong, I do struggle to like get it fixed. Dang, you subbed before my red eye issue. That's OG, man. Thanks, Joe. Okay, let me throw the transcript from my last video into Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini and see if it thinks that I might be dyslexic. Read the following transcript from my YouTube video and tell me if you think I might be dyslexic. Yeah, dyslexia is most common with reading words. That's true. I guess it wouldn't know. Yeah, I would say that I do have quite a bit of spelling errors. Trouble decoding new words, maybe. Skipping lines while reading. Yeah, I probably do. Although ChatGPT says I don't see any clear signs, but it's just the transcript, so it's not a really good source. Probably needs to watch the video. Oh my gosh, based on the video transcript, Claude says there's a few potential indicators that could suggest dyslexia. Gemini says no clear indication that you might be dyslexic. And while I worry about that, you guys can support my dyslexia fund here on patreon.com/DylanCurious. Or click that little join button under the video right there on YouTube. It's the same to me. And I noticed a lot of you are tuning out once the song starts. Like we usually go from 20% retention all the way down to 16. So in an attempt to keep you interested while you listen to this song, I have 5 facts that you didn't know about tiny tortoises to watch while you listen. Enjoy.
Manipulated, we're scammed. 3. Second video in a row that you inaccurately pronounced the Iger, and still good content though. Thanks. Hey Dylan, look into the topic of neurodivergence to gain more insight into your dyslexia. I am also dyslexic and an English teacher, so when I hear misread words, they jump out at me. A couple examples, you pronounced the word irrelevant as irrelevant, said the French were muffed rather than miffed, and cold fusions, Diego, Diego. While these things in no way diminish the brilliance of your insights into the news of the day, I thought you might wish to be aware of them. I am a great admirer of your show and your intellect. I subbed well before your red eye issue. All the best.
All right, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next AI video. Thanks for watching.